this week that coaches from the XFL that were announced met in Dallas, Texas. The Rock posted a picture of him arriving in Texas. The coaches posted pictures in there, and they had a meeting and they were discussing everything that was going on, that will go on with the XFL. We all know that happened, but there was been a lot of chatter in the all football world recently regarding spring football leagues playing in hub cities. The USFL is currently playing all its games in one city, Birmingham, Alabama. At the same time, a move like that seems good on paper, but it hasn't really been that great for the USFL. There is a big disconnect between fans of a league's home cities, which is an issue pointed out by both the hardcore football fans and the casual football person. So the reason why the engagement has not been good, as it was in the XFL, let's be honest, in the USFL, is because Pittsburgh, there is no connection. Pittsburgh doesn't play in Pittsburgh. All of these teams play in Birmingham. There's just no connection for the fans to have with these home teams. So recently, our own XFL insider, Mike Mitchell, had written about talks within the XFL circles of the league possibly doing the same thing. They're like, no, we don't want that. However, not so fast to jump to conclusions that their model is going to be the same thing as the USFL's. No, the XFL's version of a hub is different. And this is why I needed to point this out, because everybody was jumping down the XFL is going to do a same hub model like the USFL. And that's not the case. In Mike Mitchell's report about Anthony Becht, who did an interview at coaching, he always dropped this little piece of information that seems to have gotten overlooked by everyone. And that's why I had to put this article out, because I was really kind of thinking about what this means. And I started to get excited. So, quote, this is from Mike Mitchell. Recently, sources have indicated that the XFL has been pivoting from having a potential fully fledged hub setting for the league, especially after what they've seen what's going on with the USFL and its criticism, and leaning more towards setting up a central league headquarters in Texas for all 8 teams. The idea is that teams would practice together and have mini and training camps in Texas before playing games in local markets during the season, close quote. Think about this. This move by the XFL would have the best of both worlds. Let's break down, because it's a brilliant approach to season 1 of the XFL 3.0 era. And we'll get into that in a second. But first, politics and paperwork cost lots of money. So when the AAF was trying to set up practice areas for each of its team cities, something seemingly so simple to set up was a significant roadblock. Politics, local ordinances, licenses, and insurance are all just a few of the obstacles to overcome to have a team practice football in any location. It's not just here's a field, here's some balls and equipment, and go at it. There's insurance, there's licenses, there's local ordinance, there's all sorts of things that have to happen just to make that happen. Now, due to Florida's workers' compensation laws, the Orlando Apollos, under head coach Steve Spurrier, had to practice in Georgia. So you get the idea. Now, this is not the first that I heard this issue when it comes to all of these leagues. This was something that the USFL had brought up. This is something that wasn't just Florida's worker compensation laws dealing with the Orlando Apollos, but there were other issues of trying to get permits and things like that in the local area to allow you to do stuff. It's not that easy. And just try to get your local gas line lit, or get your permit to put your deck on. You get the idea. It's not easy. So what if instead all of your teams practice in the same state or area? This way, you only need to figure out the logistics once. Hence, the idea of Texas as the headquarters for the XFL. This logistical nightmare is why the USFL wanted to start in one location, which is Birmingham, Alabama. But what the USFL lacks, which is genuine interest in the league and local markets, there is none. I hate to break it to you, there is none whatsoever. It's only us alt football fans and people tuning in on TV. And we've seen the ratings. The ratings went, at least on the USA Network, went from 700,000 to 300,000. And we were there for the XFL. We knew it was going to be a drop-off, but there's some concern in the USFL circles with those ratings because there's no connection. There is no connection. That's why the CFL doesn't work in the United States per se, because there's no connection. That is very important. So what the USFL lacks, which is that genuine interest in the local markets, the XFL can make up for by flying the teams to home locations on a Thursday or Friday and then playing the games on Saturday and Sunday. The players can meet the fans, have events, talk with local reporters, then fly back to Texas afterwards. Does it really matter where the DC Defenders practice if you're a fan? I would love to go see them practice. If they were practicing in College Park or Northern Virginia or wherever. And I did go to practices, and me and maybe 20 or 30 other, it wasn't open to fans all the time. That's a nice thing to have for season ticket holders, but it's not enough to make it. Just think that's one location that they have to pay for. What if they took that approach? Let's continue. So you want a chance to meet the team and see the games live. That's about it. You can still do all of this with this approach. Really, that's the bottom line. You want to see the games, and if you're a season ticket holder, you would like to be at an event or two where you meet. I don't care if it's the coaches and a couple players. I'm cool with that. Or if it's the coaches and all the players. Just one of those kind of things. Now, it was nice when the XFL was doing their thing, when the they were doing these meetings, and the coach would be there, and team presidents, those kind of things were cool. They could still do that when meeting the team president, or maybe having a player or two out there. But this option works. This option works. Let's continue. And this explains why there are why are there 3 XFL teams in Texas? I've got to fix that. It is clear now why the XFL has 3 teams in Texas. You can do the math and calculate how playing a certain percentage of all your games in one state can save you money, let alone practice and train in the same location. One team can practice at 12 at location A, for example. The next team can come in at 4 p.m. and practice at the same location, saving money for the league and sharing resources for the little things like equipment for teams, practice dummies, trainers, water jugs, athletics tape, you name it. Teams can share it all at one location. So if you have 4 locations with 2 teams practicing in each and rotating schedules, that saves you a bunch of money rather than having one practice location for one team in one state and having to deal with all of the things that come along with that one. You can get it all figured out in one state of Texas. So you got The Rock showing up with his sweatshirt. He's going with the white sweatshirt, the black letters. I'll have to get that one too. He says, XFL represents the intersection of opportunities, and that's my job as owner, to create opportunities for players to ball out, live their dreams, take care of their families. But today, for our entire XFL, the great state of Texas, here we come, wheels up, XFL HQ football, Texas us. He's got there. Now think about the travel costs. If all teams flew out of the same airport, think about that. Texas is central to all the locations. Flying into Seattle, DC, St. Louis, Orlando, and New York would be easy too, but those locations are expensive. LA and New York would be easy too, but those locations are expensive. LA and New York. And trust me, I grew up on Long Island. I know, and I live in Maryland. So now you know that New York is expensive. So hotel costs. You can make a deal with one hotel chain in Texas, and then for home games, you're only having to pay for 2 or 3 days stay for games outside of Texas. So if you take your team and you fly DC and Seattle to DC for a game, you're just putting the 2 teams up at one location, and then that's it. And then they're coming home. Or if DC plays Dallas, then they're not going anywhere. They're staying in that home location. So it makes a big difference. And the teams will get the vibe from the hometown fans by just being in the stadium, which you don't get that at all with USFL games. Also, hotel costs. You can make a deal with one hotel in Custer. Then you have home games. You only have to pay for 2 or 3 days. And hotels are already paid for in Texas for the whole 2023 season. So it costs you nothing extra when games are played in Texas. 3 teams in Texas, 8 teams total. You do the math. You figure out how many of those games are played in Texas versus being outside of Texas. You save a bunch of money. Now, also the problem that we've been hearing, Mike Mitchell has talked about the frustration within XFL circles of how hard it is to land local deals because the XFL 2.0 locations were burned before. Not their fault, but that's what happened. Then the XFL went bankrupt. There was expected money, like locals, districts had to cover some of the costs. You know how all that stuff works. Lawyers, the whole deal. So locations don't want to be burned again. However, the XFL 2.0 did prove that in areas like DC, my team, Seattle, and St. Louis, the thirst for spring football is there. So not playing in the cities for the 2023 season will be a lost opportunity to build good faith with the fan base. Also, think about all the money you're losing in tickets revenue in these cities. The XFL could easily sell 30,000 tickets for a Battlehawks game in St. Louis. Are you kidding me? The city was on the cusp of this before COVID shut the league down and everything down. Having this hybrid model would solve this. Think about the XFL kicking off the 3.0 era where 30,000 fans in St. Louis would be huge for the league in terms of optics. The league needs to build that bridge back to the fans and places like LA and New York. So having a good showing for a season in 2023 would certainly open the doors for LA Wildcats and New York Guardians to rejoin the league. I wanted to put this out there, is that just because Mike Mitchell has been talking about LA and New York not being part of the league, that doesn't mean that that door is closed. It just means that, LA, New York, you're too expensive. We need to deal with our stuff, get through the first season, and then after that, we can talk Mexico, New York, LA, and bring teams back there. It would also show the other non-Texas teams that the league is back, and they want to bring those teams home for the 2024 season. So think about it. You have DC Defenders playing its games. Forget that. You have St. Louis. Let's talk about the biggest dog in the league, which is St. Louis. St. Louis having its home games, 30,000 fans, everything is rocking and rolling. The first season is a success. Do you think Kitty, whatever her name is, that says the same quote every single time, is whatever, maybe she's hard boiling The Rock and Redbird Capital because they're like, well, you guys got money. You're going to pay us more this time. Next time I go around, they're like, hey, are you ready to have us in the league? Just think of all the things, the extra stuff that team will bring by having them practice in the area. You're losing out. The cities are losing out on the revenue that the XFL would bring by housing the players in hotels, just like the deal that the USFL brought with Birmingham, with the hotels, everything. These leagues who are playing hardball right now are now going to go do an about face because the league was successful that first year and be like, please, let's make a deal. Like, take the deal now, because you're not going to get the same deal in 2024, St. Louis, DC, Seattle, etc. So take the deal now to get that team to play there. But the XFL might not need to do that. Just something to think about. So News Hub writer Pat Ruffino recently was on the Marcast and talked about what's better optics for football fans. Having the first 5 weeks of a spring football season, then it gets shut down because it's burned through money like crazy, or the league actually comes back for season 2. That's what we need. This hub model has to be the way for both the USFL and XFL to start. The question will be 5 years from now, which model is better? So you have to think about that too. As for Texas as the home location for the XFL, why not? SpaceX, Bitcoin mining, the Tesla Gigafactory are some of the new few businesses to open up shop in Texas recently because the state has been very business friendly. Coupled with the state's obsession with football, it's a win-win. Think about Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. Those places will do well. Houston did well. Dallas was okay. And San Antonio could rival St. Louis in terms of fans. So with the XFL approach to the hybrid hub season, they can get the best of both worlds. So it's something to consider when you hear the terrible word hub city and you're like, this is the way that it will work. And it makes sense to me. 100%. I didn't get the whole 3 teams in Texas until this bit of information from Mike Mitchell came out. And now this makes sense to me that this will work. Here's the deal, fans. 2 things you need to consider as I wear my glasses. Number 1, all roads lead to the NFL. Whether they call it a developmental league or not is irrelevant. It is a nuance that don't even worry about it. Being connected with the NFL and the NFL's quality of players, another knock against the USFL, is going to help things for the XFL. It is not the minor leagues. There's the DC Defenders is not going to be a feeder system to the DC Commanders. They're still doing their own thing. Could 10 years from now that happen? Who knows? I'm not worried about 10 years. I really want to get through year 1 and possibly up to year 3, and I'd be happy. That was my whole goal before that. So that's number 1, is don't worry about that part. And number 2, the idea of having a hub season. You have to do it. You have to do it. There is no way around it. There is no way. Now, the XFL did say that in their first iteration that they were making money, but these guys know that they're trying to just, in the initial part, until it's established, you want to kind of cut your costs the best way. You would rather by doing this, for example, you can pay for the players' hotel rooms. You can give them more money than the USFL. The money's got to come from somewhere. You cut back on doing that. Now you can pay the players more money and give them better benefits. And then at the long term, because we're playing the long game, trust me, been covering the XFL since 2018. Playing the long game is what you got to do. And I think this version of a practice hub and training, think about Team 9 too, also being there. The minute they need a player, boom, they go right to one of those teams that they're right there. It makes sense. This is the way the XFL should do it. This is the way I have a feeling that they're going to do it. Let us know what you think in the comments. Has this changed your opinion about the word Hub City?